Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, workers revolutionize.
What? Hello and welcome to Overanalysis, a new show here on Fandom Nonsense. We'll be looking at pop culture from a different perspective. Today, we'll be looking at my personal favorite superhero, Spider-Man. To set the boundaries of our discussion, since there's a lot of material to siphon through, I'm going to focus primarily on the original Amazing Spider-Man run, the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, John Romita era, and not so much on the Ultimate run or Peter's Class Trader phase or the adaptations, though they may come up from time to time. So what makes Spider-Man special? Well, I think it's kind of obvious, really. Peter Parker is an everyman.
While tragedy is clearly a common, if not ubiquitous, staple of superhero origin mythologies, Peter Parker stands out in that his tragic origin isn't an isolated event in an otherwise stable life. Sure, Batman's parents died in front of him, and that sucks, but he was still wealthy by proxy, handsome, athletic, and did I mention wealthy? By contrast, while the old comics don't lean too heavily into the poverty angle, Parker certainly didn't grow up with many resources. Whatever inheritance his parents left him, it's as buried in his trauma as they are. And of course, the last thing you think of when you think of hero is this guy.
So, I have a confession to make. I've never been the most masculine person. You know, like, I don't like sports. I don't really go for hunting. I've never been much into bodybuilding, and I can't fucking stand Metallica. So, there's always a disconnect for me with characters like Superman or even someone like, say, Captain America. Feeling weak? Don't worry, the US Army's got you covered. Sign the dotted line to shoot brown people today and we'll make a man out of you yet. Like, there's just too many implications there that I'm not comfortable with.
Of course, this is what I, and a lot of people, find so endearing about Peter Parker. He's not just an average guy, he's an average guy with not much going for him. He's damned to be an average guy. Go to college, get a science degree, struggle to find work in a capitalist system that doesn't favor intellectual pursuits, and eventually get a job as a professor at NYU or something.
But that isn't what happened. And this is the part of Spider-Man I want to explore. Should we find ourselves released from the shackles of our own poverty or oppression to some degree? What are our responsibilities to those still in distress?
Spider-Man's origin plays with this very well, as it isn't so focused on Peter learning how to use his powers in a technical sense or him running away from his powers. Pete adapts pretty quickly, and actually embraces his powers without much hesitation once he sees what they can do for him. Which brings us to the moral dilemma at the heart of Peter Parker's life.
We all know this story, so I'm just going to fly through this.
So Peter wants to get a car to take out the pretty girl at school, so he signs up for a wrestling match to win $1,000. He kicks this mark's ass, the promoter refuses to pay him, the promoter gets robbed, Pete lets the promoter get robbed, and the robber gets away, Pete lets the robber get away, the robber kills his uncle, who Pete lied to earlier by the way. Peter chases down the murderer, finds out he's a robber from before, and realizes that simply by the merit of his advantages, in spite of however they may best serve him, he is obligated to the greater good, because direct harm can and will result from his inaction.
I feel like there's a better way to say that. Something like,
Not choice, responsibility.
Nailed it. This is also why Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery works so well. I mean, sure, there's the whole predator-prey angle and his personal connection with the Osborns, but fundamentally, I think there's something more to it at the core. All of Spider-Man's adversaries, well, most of his adversaries, came from the same working class background as him, if not worse. They were by and large social outcasts and disenfranchised by society. And they all kind of came to the same crossroads that Spider-Man had to come to, and they went the wrong way. Nolan actually has a video coming out in a couple weeks that actually deals with this topic, so make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss out on that. And if you did miss out on that, then it'll be in the description down below. Oh, and I know I said I was going to focus on the OG run, but I think that Homecoming does a really good job of exploring this conflict in Peter.
Throughout the film, Peter only wants to be a part of the Avengers, to use his powers in what he considers the most effective way. But as he goes along, he realizes that where Spider-Man is needed is among the people. The world needs Iron Man for sure, but Queens needs Spider-Man, and there's more he can do for his little villa than anyone else can. So I don't think it's bad writing or character assassination for Peter to turn down Stark's offer at the end of the film. It seems to me that Peter learned the lesson that sometimes the responsibility of great power is knowing where to apply that power most effectively.
And And in Infinity War, Peter reinforces this lesson by helping Stark take on them all, because as he points out,
You can't be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood.
you know, sometimes your responsibilities require more of you than you feel capable of. So, what lessons can I take away from Spider-Man? You know, as a straight white cis dude, I am by default in a certain position of privilege, regardless of any poverty or mental anguish I may suffer from. So, what can I do? And if I struggle with that question having a modicum of privilege, what can any of us do? I think it's important to remember that even a little bit of power can be great when standing up for the powerless. And I think maybe finding the Spider-Man in all of us is finding how best to use that power responsibly.
Christ, that was corny. But seriously, I think the most encouraging thing about Peter Parker is how human he is. He's working class, dorky, a loser. He's reminded that you don't have to have a lot going for you to make a difference. I mean, let's be honest, early day Parker is as incel as you can get.
So, what do you guys think? Can Spider-Man teach us about our responsibility to the disenfranchised in spite of our own hurdles? What is the responsibility of the working and middle class to the impoverished? Now, this is a serious question that weighs social obligation versus self-care and should not be taken lightly. In fact, the far right could even spin this to talk about the refugee crisis. So let me do it for them.
If we assume that military intervention is for humanitarian ends, and I don't, but assuming it is, but the result of those interventions is always destabilization that results in radicalization and mass migration, perhaps we should have a serious discussion about military intervention. If you're really concerned about the migrant crisis, then you should really consider if military intervention is the best use of your responsibility to people living under despotic regimes. Or, you know, democracies that won't give you their oil.
Yeah, anyway, like, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment and let me know how you think you can be a good, friendly neighborhood leftist.
Also, if you're really concerned about the migrant crisis, I hope you're shitting your pants over climate change and fertilizing a fucking tree with it.
Uncle Ben is dead, and in a sense it's really I who killed him. Because I didn't realize in time that with great power there must also always be great responsibility.